Welcome again to Empathize Others, the podcast. I'm Augy Jones. Today, really looking forward to talking to a young man who was born in Africa, moved to Nova Scotia, small town in Nova Scotia, and now is really mixing it up in the Halifax regional area in community and getting jobs for people and advocating for people. So, on today's episode, we talk to Alfred Burgesson. Today we've got what we call a young whiz kid, and can't call him a kid. I've known him since he was young, but we have a guy that is so passionate about community and doing things on a national level, a regional level, and on a local level. We're happy to have Alfred Burgesson here with us today, and really excited to talk to you, Alfred, and really get into your motivations around the things that you do and highlight some of the things you do. So welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me, Augy. I feel honored to be a part of the first few. Thank you again for bringing me on. Looking forward to catching up and chatting about community and whatever it is that you want to chat about today.
Well, and you come to mind for me, Alfred, because, as I say, I've known you since you were a young man, and we're going to get into that to talk about, the communities you come from and where you got this sense of community. But I've always, especially recently, your name always comes up around that work that is around empowering other people, using the God-given gifts that you have to make sure that you're bringing people along. And I really, really appreciate that. And so just to start off, Alfred, and give people a kind of an understanding of who you are and where this community kind of passion comes from, talk about where you grew up. Sense of community from a family point of view and from an area point of view. And then I'll kind of, lead you with questions to go through where you are at this moment from that point. So community when you grew up.
Yeah, I think that's a great place to start. So I was born in Ghana on the west coast of Africa. And at 6 years old, my family decided that we would move to Canada. And so back in 2004, we came here and we landed in Cape Breton in Port Hawkesbury, very small town, rural Nova Scotia. And we landed there because my dad was an engineer and he was working at an SEC as a prof at that time. For me, growing up, when we hit the tarmac, when we landed in Canada, it was like, we're not here to mess around. My parents were really focused, and they sacrificed a lot to bring us here. And so from a very early age, it was instilled in us that, we're here to have a generational shift in terms of our family, and from an early age, also education was the number one sort of primer for us. The preaching of education as the way to success or reaching your goals was definitely high up there. But yeah, landed in Port Hawkesbury at 6 years old. And in a very small, rural, mostly white town, it was quite a culture shock coming from Ghana in Africa. And so, my family was really my community starting out. And, in our household, we were prepared for the world that we would be walking into in terms of, living in Canada and living in North America. I think my family was really my community in those early years in Port Hawkesbury, and together we sort of, charted the blueprint of how it is we want to show up in this society.
Well, that's a great beginning, and I think about seeing your older brother play basketball, at Queen's, and then, he having a great academic career and getting into medicine. And then I remember seeing you as a young kid at Sayre, you know what I mean? A ball player.
Yeah.
And what I will say is that when you talk about your community being mostly your family when you were growing up, I thought that as a teenager, as a young 13, 14-year-old, you did a really good job of integrating into the community of Port Hawkesbury, because I more met you as a leader in the school at that age more than, and you were a very good basketball player at that time too, but you had those skills. Talk about, as you started to bring the community, that sense of community you had at home, what did Port Hawkesbury teach you about communicating and building relationships that were, let's say, unlike Ghana?
It's a great question. Yeah, I mean, it was tough being in Port Hawkesbury, and being, 5 out of 7 Black people in a small town like that. And so, I mean, from the get, I knew that I needed to sort of, find my community outside of my family. I knew that I needed to sort of curate or seek the community that I truly wanted. And so, I guess for me, it was always like a search for community. And through that, I think I forged relationships with people that I wanted to be in my community, to be in my circle. At the same time, realizing that the folks who may not be in my close circle are also part of this greater community that needs care, needs support. And so, growing up, I think the principles that my parents instilled in me around, treating everyone as you'd like to be treated yourself, and to, practice etiquette, and to, support people who may not be as lucky as you or as privileged as you. I think those are some of the principles that sort of allowed me to just be the way that I was in that small town. I mean, while it was very difficult, I think it allowed me to practice some skills early at an early age, in terms of being able to relate to people, and caring about others around you. So I was lucky that, as uncomfortable as an experience like that is, being 5 out of 7 Black people in a community as a family, as uncomfortable as that was, I think the practice of going through just day-to-day life in a space like that, I think prepared me a lot for generally this world and what it's like to be a Black man in this world.
Yeah, and it's interesting how you see, I think about the analogy of a plant growing. And so some of your early growth, I really see it in the tree that you've come to become now around inclusivity and being able to speak to many people and code switch and accommodate and empathize. And you think about you being in Port Hawkesbury and your family, you had to become very good at that. And I love that you said comfort level, because I think for everybody, even though we have things that we advocate for, we still need to come out of our comfort zone. So because men of color are advocating for something, they still have to feel the feminist movement and the able-bodied movement. There's always privileges that we have to be able to spread out. And so moving from Port Hawkesbury, and then, the news was Alfred was coming to Halifax, and so you're on your way to Halifax Grammar School. And I do want you to speak a little bit on that transition, even being at the grammar school, which is a private school in town, but also talk to me about what Halifax did for you, because now you're in a metropolis that has a larger Black community. And so talk about that transition from Port Hawkesbury. Now you're a young adult and you're moving to Halifax Grammar School.
Yeah, that's a critical, looking back, that's a critical point on my journey, right? And I mean, as a young basketball player, I had hopes and dreams of playing prep school in the States, or, getting that D1 scholarship was sort of my dream as a young boy. And I think Halifax Grammar School was the opportunity for me to explore that dream, but on a local level. It didn't have to deal with me moving to south of the border to the States. And my parents were comfortable with that. And the reason why, I think I went to grammar was not only because I was chasing that dream, but I remember early on when I finally had the opportunities to attend some basketball camps or basketball clinics that, whether it was St. FX or Basketball Nova Scotia would put on. Like I got the sense that the people that were watching me believed in me.
Nice.
And you were one of
Yeah.
those people, Augie. You were definitely one of those people who, as a young baller, like you're trying to figure out like how you can make it, and it's hard. But when you have people who believe in you, I think it makes the path easier. And so, you know, coming to grammar school was tough. To get there was tough, but to be there was to be there was even tougher. Um, Man, like, yeah, what an experience. Looking back during that time, I can tell you for sure, like, looking back on that time, I can tell you for sure that I suffered and suffered in the sense of, you know, moving from Port Hawkesbury, which is a rural community. There's not a lot happening in Port Hawkesbury, to be completely honest. And moving into this metropolis of Halifax and being, landing at the private school, there was just another culture shock for me. And, the wealth that people had around me and the privilege that people had around me. I think for a while, it was it took me a while to make sense of the environment that I was in.
Yeah.
But I think
Yeah.
it was another moment of me practicing sort of being out of my comfort zone and making sense of the world around me and being aware of the ways of being that people had. And yeah, that was a really interesting experience. Again, I say that while I was there, I can tell you that it was hard and that, I use the word suffer, but that has led to a wealth of knowledge for me. Again, in terms of being in comfortable spaces or being in spaces where you stick out, and people have assumptions about who you are and what you can do in this world, and how you show up, and it takes a lot to overcome those stigmas or those assumptions that people make of you. It takes a lot to overcome that and to actually surpass their expectations. But at the grammar school is another place where I had people who believed in me, and a couple of those people I'd love to shout out right now is Tim McGarrigle, who was the basketball coach there.
Yeah.
And here's a man who, just knew what I was going through. Was one of the few people, in that time of my life who knew like how I was actually doing. And he believed in me. Like, he was there for me, and he coached me. He coached me not just in basketball, but he coached me in life as well. And so he was a huge mentor for me during that time, huge support. Another person I had during that time was Dr. Michael Butt, and he's a history teacher at Grammar. But he's also the program coordinator for an initiative at Grammar called Junior Achievement. Junior Achievement is a province-wide youth initiative, but at Grammar we had a chapter, and we had this program called the Company Program. And again, I came to Grammar. I thought basketball was my goal, was my dream, and then I joined this Company Program, and here we are, students who come together after school, and we build an organization. We build a product or service, and we decide how we're going to market this product or service to the greater community.
That's cool.
And this is where I have another tipping point in my journey, because it opened up a whole new world for me in terms of what I thought I'd want to do in my life. To that point.
You hit on a couple of things there. You hit on a couple of things,
Yeah.
Alfred. I do want to slide in because I don't want to lose these thoughts, because I like the connection. When we talk about community, a lot of the people that are watching the podcast are really interested in how you get engaged with the community and why. And so some of the things you hit on there where you keep talking about the comfort level piece. And I think that's huge, because in the work that I've done with community and advocacy, I often say to people, it's a privilege to be comfortable. Right? Like, why not? Why can't you be uncomfortable? Because certain people, as you see your situation, you were forced to be uncomfortable, but that's where the growth happens. So it's almost like you were forced to grow. But then the other thing you talk about, and Tim McGarrigle was a real experienced coach to be at the grammar school, because as we know, he coached at 2 universities. He's won AUS championships. He's one of the better coaches in the province, if not the region. And you had him at school. So that's fantastic. But what you also bring up is believing in you. And so I know I believed in you just watching you come from Port Hawkesbury. And whenever I bumped into you, I made sure, because there was a time I was coaching at St. Mary's, actually, when you were at the grammar school. And so, I didn't know what I was doing in supporting your community, you being part of my community. But even me saying, hey, Alfred, how you doing? And good, I hear you scored 20 the other night. Great job. Whatever it was, that believing in, so being uncomfortable, believing in, and then now you're getting to, my mind shifted from basketball to this organizational structure. What can I do from Dr. Butt's kind of influence? So bring me now to St. Mary's, and that shift that was happening in you from student athlete to organizations, initiatives, moving people forward. Like what? So as you got to St. Mary's, talk about the shift and how you saw yourself moving in community.
Absolutely. So mind you, a lot of during that time when I was getting on the journey of entrepreneurship or social enterprise, I was studying a lot of literature or case studies in terms of community development, how communities who may be underprivileged created sort of schemes and enterprises that allow them to thrive. And so that definitely played a role in my development in terms of what I wanted to do in my life. And in going to SMU, in my first year, I realized that the writing was on the wall in terms of how I was going to allocate my time. I realized that I was a lot more interested in either meeting people that were in community and doing sort of community enterprises. I was interested in meeting them and working with them more than I was practicing my 3-pointer or my free throws or working out in the gym. In that first year, I started my first company called Under the Bridge Digital Media. And that was with Jeremy McAvoy, who's a former captain at St. Mary's basketball, an incredible leader, an incredible community leader. Jeremy is, and together we started to look for those people in community who we could work with and who we could build with, who we could showcase and highlight, because that's also a part of building community and building, relationships. And so we did this digital media thing for a couple of years. And so that was really the transition from grammar to St. Mary's was, I had a sandbox to be able to practice entrepreneurship at grammar, but in going to St. Mary's, this was like, okay, we're in the world now. Basketball's not it, but I know what is, and I'm going to practice what is. And so Jeremy and I sort of just partnered up and together for a couple of years, we built this digital media company and hired a lot of young people to be a part of our community, to be a part of our initiative. And together we worked with clients like AUS, TD Bank, and at one point we did a project with NBA Canada. And that's, I think at that point is when I was like, okay, there's a lot of potential here for this work that I'm doing, and the practice is paying off. And so the transition from Grammar to St. Mary's was really another level of experience when it came to taking initiative on my own.
No, that's great, and that leads into, I think I'm gonna, make the decision to switch the pace a bit here, and so I want to switch to initiatives that you've been involved with. So we're at the point where you realize, and I remember seeing yourself and Jeremy, Jeremy's another guy who I really supported and had a lot of real affection for the way he did his thing. Basketball wise, he was one of the guys that did the dirty work, and really didn't need stardom. And I saw I would go to AUS, I did some commentating at the time, and I would see you guys doing your thing, and I was so proud of you. And it goes to show you that there's something around community too, that when you see people that you saw from young, I knew you and Jeremy from 13, 12. And then when I'm at the Metro Center, you guys are like in your 20s and you've got your own media company and I'm seeing the edits and stuff. No, I'm really proud of you guys, man. And I think that's it too, is you give people support. And then when they're on their own and they're doing well and you just feel something, I guess that's it too. You feel a piece of that, right? So I just wanted to say that. So what I plan to do now, Alfred, is there's a couple of initiatives that I'm really interested in that you are a part of. I'm going to start in the past and move forward. So how about I call something out and you talk about it for a couple minutes, and then I'm going to call something else out. And so you get a chance to promote these things, but also say, what was their link to community? So 2018 Halifax Collective.
Yeah, Halifax Collective. Through the digital media work we were doing, I started to get more inquiries and questions around, not only do we want you to capture these events in community, but people started to ask me to help design them or to help provide some insight into how to best achieve their programs and things like that. And that's when I started to realize that in this society that we're in, there are tables that are having conversations around youth development or youth initiative that youth aren't at. And so HFX Collective was my way to really create a table or multiple tables that youth were at, that allowed these actors and institutions in the society to pull up a chair and to talk to them and to work with them and to better understand what it is youth wanted to be doing in community, what it is youth wanted to be a part of, what ideas youth had, how they wanted to show up at work, what type of work they wanted to do. HFX Collective was sort of the space in which I was completely focused on elevating youth voice through community engagement and through employment opportunity as well. So in that time, we worked with, for example, a Crown corporation called Develop Nova Scotia, and we worked on creating a youth engagement strategy because they've got a mandate of developing public space and public infrastructure. And in that time, I sure wasn't, showing up at open houses or design charrettes to provide my feedback into the public infrastructure that was, literally developing our city and our province. And I also didn't see a lot of youth in those types of spaces. And so I sort of worked with them to help design what that could look like in the future. And it's so cool because, you know, these are things that happened years ago, but you're finally starting to see the ripple effects of some of these things.
Yes.
Worked on a housing initiative. So in partnership with future city builders, we recruited 30 youth in the city to a program called Future City Builders, where they provided ideas, brought ideas forward in terms of affordable housing in Halifax and place community sort of neighborhood initiatives. And through that experience, again, I think the practice of giving people that space at the table to even think about what housing they want in the community. These are things that in the immediate, may be seen to have little impact, but I think these are things that long term raise a level of awareness in youth's minds.
Yes.
That I hope allows them to make better decisions in our world. And I think looking back on HFX Collective, certainly the experience that I had, just being able to think about community initiatives and the ways in which we must engage our youth. And I think looking back with the youth that also participated, I sure do hope that long term, them having those opportunities and spaces to practice and to bring ideas forward. I think the hope is that they're more aware of the world we live in and they're able to contribute their skills for as long as they're here.
Nice. So next one, 2020, inclusive youth employment.
Yeah, I mean, I think it'll be a good transition into Tribe. Inclusive youth employment project was a program that I designed to scale what HFX Collective was doing at the time.
Nice.
So like I said, I had an organization, you had youth involved, youth around the table, and we would create these spaces for other youth and other institutions to participate with us. And the Inclusive Youth Employment project was essentially, the mandate and goal of that was to identify existing organizations in the province that need to have spaces for youth as well. So, and spaces for underrepresented youth. And so Black, Indigenous, people of color, young people, youth with exceptionalities, youth who may be underemployed. That was sort of the goal, is to create employment opportunities for youth in organizations across the province where the youth themselves could replicate what HFX Collective has been doing, but in their local communities and within organizations. So that was the initial vision of it. And, through that experience, I guess I learned a few things about what it is that I wanted to do and how I really wanted to focus my time. And I think this is another experience that took me to another level in terms of doing the things that I felt truly passionate about, or things that I thought would, that set me on fire in terms of passion and aligning with my purpose. And,
Yes.
Through that experience, I noticed something about the system that I was operating in, and it was that we were creating a temporary solution to a systemic problem.
Yeah, that's insightful.
Yeah, it was that, okay, we're going to provide these 15 young people employment for 2 years guaranteed, and we're going to provide these employers subsidies to enable them to employ these young people. But I was I was starting to realize that while that 2 years may be really a unique experience for young people and it can be valuable for them,
Yes.
I started to have a shift. And I think it had to do with a lot of what was happening in the world at the time around George Floyd and COVID. And I started to think more of, rather than empowering these young people to have security or this opportunity for 2 years, could I create spaces and opportunities where these young people and, I think underrepresented, minority groups in general, BIPOC individuals and communities, have sort of the power and are empowered to actually do what it is that sets them on fire. And so, I guess I started to realize that, through the work that I was doing, I may have been imposing something upon youth for a temporary period of time when in reality, maybe I should be creating a space for them to discover what it is that they want to do for their life's work. And so that's been a huge shift for me, mindset wise, over the last year. And I think it's had a lot to do with the injustices that have sort of surfaced in this world.
Yes.
And it's now sort of led me to the point where, creating an initiative to focus on BIPOC empowerment is sort of where I'm focused.
Perfect timing. So we're going to shift to where you are right now. I was waiting to get to this point, so I'm really excited to hear about Tribe. You're the founder of Tribe. And again, I love the podcast because we can see the growth of how you got to Tribe now. Even if someone listens to this and watches this podcast, they can see the building blocks that led to da-da-da-da. So now talk about something that you've done very, very recently. And I can see now where the logic came to build this. So talk about, you're the founder of Tribe. What is Tribe and what do you want to do with it?
Yeah. Tribe stemmed out of a conversation that I was having with my sister around this time last year with George Floyd and with everything that was happening during COVID. And the question that we were sort of having a conversation about was, how do we support each other as BIPOC individuals and communities in this world and society that we live in, knowing the injustices that we faced for generations and face today. How do we support one another? And my sister and I, kind of went back and forth on this conversation for a while. And so she has a master's in digital media and technology, and she's very much able to provide digital services to the clients she works with. And so there was an aspect of enterprise within the idea in terms of how do we support BIPOC, whether businesses or people or communities, how do we support them in this digital age adapt? And so that was sort of one stream of thought. And then for me, I think my focus was, how do we create the spaces where Black, Indigenous people of color can learn from each other and can build community with one another and can relate to each other. That was sort of my focus in bringing this thing to life. And recently we launched it last month. And our sort of overarching idea with Tribe Network is that our mission is to build Canada's BIPOC entrepreneurship and innovation hub. And so what this means is creating a space where individuals can create a profile, organizations can create subgroups and what we're calling tribes, and together people, organizations, communities can coexist on this platform, where we're focused on sharing information with one another, that will allow all of us in this network to succeed in our endeavors, and allowing the space for people to connect across the country. Yes, locally, I think having connectivity locally is really important, but I think we also need to break down the silos that exist in this country.
Yeah, true.
That gets in the way of new ideas, or gets in the way of equitable access to certain programs or funding. And so Tribe really is trying to create a BIPOC focused space where individuals can show up, organizations can show up, and together we build out this community, and we empower each other to achieve success, is ultimately what sort of our top level vision of this thing is.
It's a great, congratulations. And I was really excited to see that announcement on LinkedIn and a lot of the social media. And I think there's a brilliance to it around adapting and seeing what happened during COVID, what happened during Black Lives Matter, what happened during the Me Too movement. And what comes to mind, Alfred, that you're bringing up is this global community that is digital. And so where we had to get together, and if you had to go to a conference, you had to pay for the flight and get to Barcelona or get to Toronto. But the great thing about the equity of digital is that you can make these connections that are beyond your region, that you have like-minded people that do T-shirts or do supporting women, and you can meet digitally for free, and I think that there's something around. I love the conversation we've had around seeing you build out from Ghana to coming to Canada to Cape Breton to Halifax to, I know you were on the Prime Minister's Youth Council as well. And now you're seeing this like almost national global community piece. And I really want to let you know how much I'm proud of you. I love the work you do. I think that, for me being, the son of someone that did, and of a son of two parents that were very much into community, I grew up in that. It's embedded in me. And so I can see, so I have an eye for that. I watch those people. So one of the reasons I wanted to invite you onto the podcast was because of the work that I know you did. And it was a great conversation, Alfred. I learned a lot. And I think there's a lot that people can unpack from your journey and how you connected with community. And you use this word tipping point. Like there was times in your life that you went, oh, I'm expanding. Oh, I'm expanding. Oh, I'm expanding. And I think that everybody can do that. That's for everyone. And that's where growth comes from. So, I really want to thank you for the time spent. You have a supporter in me around the work that you do. And hopefully we'll have you on. Well, not hopefully, if you want to. I know you're a big guy, but hopefully you'll give us your time later on when you're this global sensation to come back and let us know how things went. So I really want to thank you for being on the podcast. And, when I think about empathizing others, you're someone that definitely comes to mind.
Augy, thank you. Thank you so much for creating this platform to talk about community and to speak with leaders and to speak with people that are trying to make a change in this world. I think it's important to elevate some of these stories, and I'm so glad to see that you're doing that. And I also want to just say, thank you for believing in me as a kid, because, it takes people like you who believe in young people and who give them opportunities and who, give them fuel to keep going. It's people like you that allow people like me to exist. And so I just want to say thank you for everything you've done for not only myself, but for the youth that you've coached in your coaching career, and I know that the work that you're doing right now within our provincial institutions, I know that will breed success in our society, and I know that will breed future leaders. So thank you so much for everything that you do, and I will be back, and we will share another conversation together.
Thank you. Soon. Thank you so much. Thanks, Alfred. Thanks for watching this episode of Empathize Others, the podcast. We hope that you really enjoyed the show. If you're enjoying the podcast series overall, as much as we enjoy making it, make sure that you like, comment, and subscribe. It really helps our channel grow, and when you subscribe, you'll know right away when our new episodes are released.